You're listening to Lemon's Listening Library. Discover the story behind the stories with unique and raw conversations from the people who make your favorite books a reality. Alrighty, welcome to this episode of Lemon's Listening Library. I'm your oh my gosh. I'm the person who's here talking to you because I'm your host, Randie Lemons, fantasy author, or RL Rose to those of you in the romance community, and I'm joined today by my amazing co-host, Kathy. Kathy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Kathy Ireland, uh, co-host, obviously, of this incredible podcast. Um, I also own, well, I'm getting ready this, you're hearing it here. I'm going to register my business, Phoenix Audio Productions. Um, they're down right now for maintenance. How rude over the weekend. So I'll do it probably Tuesday. So that's exciting. So that is coming down the works. I pretty much listen to all of my books on audio. So
Yeah. Alrighty, and just real quick before we introduce our guest, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping. If you guys are interested in joining our Patreon services, we have a really cool program through that where you can have your services advertised across our social media platforms and on our podcast episodes. So if that's something you're interested in, getting your services out to the book community, whether it's you're an author and wanting your book advertised or you are an editor looking for clients, let us know. We can help you out. And now, the moment you've all been waiting for, our amazing guest, Danielle. Danielle, will you please introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yes. Thank you guys for having me here. So as you said, my name is Danielle. I am a visibility and marketing coach for authors, specifically in the online space, because there is so much to learn about marketing as an author myself. And Randie, I'm sure you understand, trying to get your books out there in front of people is kind of overwhelming at first. And so my job is to come in and teach and educate these authors, help them come up with a strategy to help them get their books in hands of more readers and get more visibility so that they can ultimately have a profitable writing career.
Yeah, that's such a huge thing that is needed because most of us
is
are like, I wrote a book, now what?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly how it was for me when I first wrote my first book and I published it. And then I was like, okay, crickets, what do I do now?
Yeah. So was there is that what kind of happened as you wrote the book and then you found the need, or how did that transpire to you slipping into that role?
It was kind of a culmination of multiple different things. So I have owned multiple businesses before, excuse me. I owned a construction company actually way long time ago, and marketing was one of the things that I needed to learn how to get clients, right? And so I started learning a little bit about marketing when I was in that business, but then after I wrote my book and really started this passion project of writing, I was like, okay, how do I do the same thing for my book? And that was the catalyst. That was what really sent me down this rabbit hole of learning the ins and outs of marketing and publishing and editing and all of the things that it takes to really make a book stand out and have an impact on the readers and the market.
that's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah. You're doing work that we all need.
The Lord's work.
Yeah.
You're doing the
Um,
Lord's work, Danielle.
I love what I do too. It's so much fun for me. It's very I'm a very analytical person, so seeing all the checks and balances and things was right up my alley.
Right. And I don't think a lot of authors look at their writing and their books as like a business, right?
Right.
It's just kind of more in the creative mindset, like we're here to do the thing, and shifting it to look at it as a business is really going to be the thing that kind of pushes you to making it a business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I was guilty of that too. I wrote my first book and was like, this was fun. This was a fun adventure, but I didn't know what to do with it afterward. And a lot of people, a lot of authors are in the same place of they write this book and they just are focused on the creative process of it. And then it's just kind of, it doesn't go anywhere and they get discouraged and then they stop writing and they're doing a disservice to the rest of the world because people need those stories. And so when they learn how to look at themselves as a business and their book as their product, then they're able to kind of shift that mindset and look at it through a different perspective, and they can start working toward getting that book out there even more.
I would
Yeah.
think that they would even need to look at it like the whole thing as a business, right?
Mm-hmm.
So even their time, like, you know, just like in any business, you have to allocate your time based on, the things that need to be done to get things accomplished. So you have to allocate your time for writing, obviously, but also social media, the advertising, like what you're saying, packing and actually sending things out. Like I
Mm-hmm.
would, I would think that that would be something that would is needed really in the whole realm of, it's like, oh, okay, I put my story down on paper. That was cool, but now it's a business, and you have
Right.
to think about it that way.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's something, again, I mean, a lot of authors think of it creatively, which it is, and rightfully so. We should definitely hold on to that creative aspect of it. But when you're wanting to be real serious about it, it does become a second job.
Excuse me. That was one of the first things that I started doing, was just like figuring out how many words I write a day.
Mm-hmm.
Let's look and let's track how many words I'm writing daily, so that way I can also know what can I accomplish. Because if I set myself unrealistic expectations, but I didn't realize that I can't even accomplish that even if I wanted to, that makes it to where now I know what I'm capable of. And so my goals are a lot more achievable. And that was a huge moment for me to be like, oh, okay, that's why I'm burning myself out. I have these
Mm-hmm.
goals that I can't even accomplish because my daily word count is not 8,000 words a day.
So you're kind of setting yourself up to fail in a way. Do you feel?
Yeah,
Is
you
that how you
can.
felt?
Yeah. I think that I was just more into the mindset of like, I'm gonna get this done a lot faster than what I could do it. And yeah, it definitely burned me out,
Yeah,
because
that
then that
happens to the
deadline
best of
came
us.
around and then you're like trying to write all of the words like the weekend before. So Danielle, with your journey and where you started, you started in, a not great environment growing up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that was something. How did you go into writing a story about someone else when you were still trying to figure out who you were?
Yeah. So for me, I grew up in my parents were married, but my dad was an alcoholic. There was a lot of fighting. I was a very quiet, reserved kind of kid. One of those kids that would kind of sit in the middle row of class and take all the notes and get all the A's and everything, but I didn't have many friends. Um, and so in high school, my junior year of high school, I started dating this guy, and he was like a mutual friend with one of my best friends, and he ended up being quite abusive. And at the time, I didn't really know how to speak up for myself because I had seen years and years and years of my parents constantly fighting, no communication, no sticking up, no setting boundaries, none of that. So I came into this relationship with no expectations. I didn't know how to stand up for myself. And he eventually convinced me to give up a lot of my creative pursuits. So I used to paint, I used to draw, I used to be in all of the art classes. And he's like, well, that's boring. Like, I don't like that. Why are you doing that? So I stopped. And then I turned to writing because that gave me an outlet that he didn't have to see. And so I was able to start creating these stories. And through the encouragement of my English teachers, bless them, they are wonderful. I'm still in contact with one of them today, and she's absolutely wonderful. Through their encouragement, I was like, well, maybe I can make something of this. And then fast forward to I'm in college, I meet another guy, get married. It's a horrible, horrible disaster from the get go. And that's where I really started to dive more into healing myself. And so that was seeking out therapy. That was learning boundaries. That was sticking up for myself. That was figuring out who I was and what I wanted. And through that process, my first book came to light. And that first book focused a lot on PTSD and overcoming trauma, and especially witnessing trauma as a young child. So that book was kind of my healing journey. And then the other books thereafter kind of have similar themes of healing and discovering who you are and taking back your voice, because writing helped me take back my voice and rediscover who I was. So that's how I got into it.
That's beautiful. Now,
That's an
that first
amazing
book that you
story.
wrote, was that like a self-help book, or was that fantasy?
It was a fiction book. Yeah, so it
Nice.
was a contemporary romance. Right now, I'm currently writing contemporary romance and historical fiction romance. And so that first book was my very first contemporary romance. There were faith-based themes woven throughout because that was another aspect that helped me through everything. But my other books, they don't have faith-based themes. They're just kind of like for anybody.
Yeah. Dang. I see myself in a lot of your journey, that it's very similar to you with the writing, and then the writing was such a therapeutic thing that I needed to begin the healing. And I just want to say kudos to you for seeing the pattern in your life. You're like, okay, hang on a second. I've attracted this twice now.
Mm-hmm.
I am bringing into my life what I know, because that's just how humans operate, is we want, regardless of how shitty it is, we want what we're familiar with. And so often we end up in relationships that mirror our parents because that's what we're familiar with.
Yeah. Yeah, getting out of your comfort zone is hard, especially when you've not been taught that you can have anything else. So that was one of the hardest things for me, was actually getting to the point of saying, I don't want this. I want better, and it's okay that I want better. I want different. And of course, I think growing, getting older, maturing, my prefrontal cortex fully developing, I think all of those things came into play with finally getting away from that type of abusive relationship and really putting my stake in the ground and saying, this is who I am, and I will not expect and accept anything less than everything that I absolutely deserve and want.
Was there like a certain event or something specific that happened, or something that really, because I've both Rainey and I've been also in abusive relationships, and like you have to get to that point, right, where
Mm-hmm.
everybody else could tell you that you're in an abusive relationship, but you're like, no, no, whatever. But when you come to that point, right, and that's like the switch where
Yeah.
you're like, yeah, I am done.
Yeah, so for me, it was a couple things, like it wasn't a sudden realization. It was more gradual. I ended up having a miscarriage, and then after that, things got even worse, and it was one thing after another, constant fights, very dramatic, very not good situations. What what helped me actually get out of that relationship was I found out he was cheating. And it was after he had told me that we're moving to multiple states away. You can either come with me or you can stay here. I don't care what you do, but I'm going. And I'm like, I at the time didn't have a job. I didn't have any way to support myself. I wasn't about to impose on my mom and be like, hey, I'm back. Even though she would have taken me in with welcome arms as she has before. But I was like, okay, he's my husband. I guess I got to go with him. And so we literally packed up all of our stuff on a trailer, not even an enclosed trailer. We threw a tarp on everything, and we drove, to Tennessee. We were from Indiana. We drove to Tennessee. And a few days after we get there, I learned that he's cheating with a woman down there.
Oh my
Um,
God.
and so all of my stuff is in storage. So I end up slapping him across the face, and I tell him, you're never going to do that to me again. You're never going to hurt me again. I got my two dogs. I loaded up the car with what I could, and I drove back, and I had $3 to my name. I was homeless for a while because I was not willing to impose on family members and friends with my dogs, with, what I was carrying with me. And I was like, we're going to figure out what to do. We're going to make this work. And so, it was the dead of winter. My dog slept on my chest to keep me warm in the car. I slept in the Kmart parking lot, and eventually, I think with the grit and the determination, things started to work out. I ended up getting a job that paid really well, was able to move in with my mom, figure out an issue with my dogs, and things started going much better. But there was like so much that I had to work through. just to get to the point of like being okay, you know, going through all of that, 8 years of that, and then, you know, starting over. That was my 20s.
so
I spent my
scary.
20s in that.
That moment, and I think that is scarier than leaving the toxic situation, is the fact that you're like, I just spent 8+ years in this, building this life, and now it's like you have to demolish all of it. You have
Yeah.
to start from the ground zero and rebuild. And that was probably like, I walked away from a farm, I walked away from animals, I walked away from, this life, this idea that I had that I wanted, and then being like, no, I actually don't want that life or
Yeah.
anything that is associated with it. And then immediately after, I tried to build it back up, but it was all wrong. It was like, I'm trying to replace what I had, and I still, like, I had to scrap it all. I had to start completely over, even though I was trying to pull back into what I was wanting that I thought I lost. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely hard. Like when you invest so much time into something to step away and say, I want something different, which, I mean, granted, we are the authors of our own life. We can hit them with a plot twist whenever we want to, but doing it in real life, as empowering as it is, doing it in real life it's really scary. It's terrifying.
That's a little bit more than just writing words on a paper.
Yeah.
just a little bit.
Yeah.
I think that too, when you have if you have kids, that are also depending on you, um, that kind of takes away. Like I was not able to really focus on myself because I had 3 kids. Like there was no time for me. Like, you know, so I understand that. Like you do eventually you're gonna have to go back and, peel the onion back and figure out what needs to be healed and where you need to do the work. But it took me a very long time to get to that point where I just had the capacity even to do it. So it's a journey.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think the gradual realization, and I think that that's healthier too, right? Instead of just this snap decision of like leaving, we all probably poured our soul into it trying to get it to work. And after you do so much of like just trying to fit a square peg in a round hole and it's not working, no matter how much you shave yourself down and try to become the thing that this life needs, and then it's not you and it's not authentic.
Yeah,
So
making those snap decisions is difficult. You know, usually you're reacting instead of responding. And I think, you know, when you have your ducks in a row, you're looking at it logically, you make better decisions than just, you know, flying off the handle and making, you know, a decision out of emotion.
yeah. Well, and your situation led to one of your, I would say, leading points into finding out who you are authentically. You started working on your collection of poetry. That how much of all this pain went into writing those poems?
All of it. All of it. Like the poetry that was my outlet. That was my personal kind of diary of I went through a really dark place. And I think you guys can understand, you know, like when you pour so much of yourself into something and it's not getting poured back into you, you become empty. And when you're empty, you get depressed and you have anxiety and you have panic attacks and you're hyperventilating on the floor. And, you know, how are you going to communicate all of these things to someone who obviously isn't listening? You know, so I wrote these poems and they're dark and they're horrible, but that was my mindset where I was at, you know, and so that helped me kind of release it and get it out so that I could see it in a visual way and make more sense of it. And that was therapy for me. Before I found a therapist, that was my therapy.
Yep, same. I wrote the love story of me and my partner at the time, and like years later I went back and I read it and I was like, oh, this is so cringy. This is so bad. And you can just feel the toxic in the relationship. And I was like, but that was who I was when I wrote that. That was the place I was, and I can respect that person because I needed that person to get where I am now. I'm not ever going to be that again. I'm not going to go back, but that person would be proud of where I'm at now, and I needed to go through what I did to get where I'm at.
Yeah. Yeah,
I journaled.
absolutely.
Same thing with yours.
I journaled through all of mine.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be interesting to go back and read through those. Do you still have those?
Terrifying. I do, I think.
Terrifying. There you go, Kathy.
Yeah.
Start your journey of writing too. Let's do it.
My best friend and I, we we met at the same time that our husbands, like we all met at in church, and when I got married and then she got married also very quickly. Like we kind of went our own ways, right? 'Cause then we left the church and we had lost touch for probably about 10 years or so. But when we reconnected, it's like our entire lives had basically been a mirror of each other. And to this
Mm.
day, it still is happening. I mean, she's going through, and I'm like, can we just agree that the next man that we decide, like, we have to approve?
Yeah.
Because,
If you're gonna affect my life somehow on some freaky alternative dimension, like,
yeah, we need to be on the same page here with this.
yeah,
Yeah, but we always joke that we should write a book of, of how our lives like mirrored each other, and
that's
it would,
crazy.
it would
That'd be
be
interesting.
amazing. Hmm.
But that led you, Danielle, that led you to where you're at, and that like I think some artwork and like the darkness of it and other people reading what you wrote and connecting with it because they're in that spot too. Like even though writing might not have necessarily been their outlet, your writing and reading what you went through lets them know they're not alone. Lets them know that there is, people out there who have these dark feelings and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the biggest thing is people feel like they're alone, like when they're going through these things. And if they've been made to feel like they can't talk about it or they get in trouble because they talk about it, having them feel that connection with someone else in whatever art form, whether it be music, painting, books, whatever, and they feel connected and they're like, oh, they went through it too. They know what I'm feeling. They got through it. It gives them hope.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
100%. And I love that too because I think that so there's such a there's such a general judgment in society for, and I'm not going to even relegate it to women, but to people who are in, because there are men who are in abusive relationships too. But it's like, well, just leave. Well, it's not that easy. Like
Right.
it's just not how it works. When you've been in that, toxicity and verbal putting down regularly, like you start to believe it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just not that easy. So I love that you have, put that out there that somebody, and most of the time people are isolated in those instances. They
Yeah.
are kind of alone, to be honest. But it's great that you toss that lifeline out and, give people a little life jacket to be like, okay, you're
Yeah,
not
and
alone.
that's what I try to do with all of my books too. All of my books, the first two that I published, the first one, like I said, talked about like PTSD, witnessing domestic abuse as a young child, bouncing back from that, stepping into a young adult as carrying this baggage and healing from that. The second one talks about dealing with alcoholism. My dad, like I said, was an alcoholic up until the day he died. And it runs in the family, unfortunately. So that book focuses on that. My third book talks about, finding yourself, discovering your identity, which, funnily enough, I never finished writing that book when I was in this abusive relationship because I didn't know who I was. I couldn't write a female main character who knew who she was when I didn't know who I was. So that book has been sitting on the back burner for forever. Like I'm almost done with it now. But
Yeah.
yeah, like all of the themes of my book focus on real life issues, mental health, relationships, trauma, abuse, healing. Like that's the biggest theme is healing and redemption, like self redemption for yourself or forgiveness for others, because we can't control what other people do to us, but we can control how we respond to them. And that I think is the most encouraging thing that I learned going through all of this is I can't control them, but how I present myself, how I hold myself, and what I choose to allow and accept, I can control those things.
Yeah. where was the point where you went from this being a creative outlet to thinking I can make something out of this? This can become a professional thing.
So that was also gradual. It was, I wrote my first two books, got those published, wrote them under a pen name, and they did relatively well. Most of the book signings that I had, they sold out. I had people who were messaging me left and right saying, "Hey, I want your book," or "I just got it from Amazon. This is great," yada yada yada, whatever. And I was like, maybe there's more to this. And so I dabbled in a little bit of editing here and there. I ended up looking into an opportunity with a publisher that was within my area, and they were actually partnered with some of the big five publishers. So like Thomas Nelson was another one that they were partnered with, and they had a self-publishing unit between these big five and their corporation. And so I helped with that for a little while, doing the marketing. What was it? Marketing correspondent or something like that, coordinator, whatever. And I learned, the business side a little bit more. I learned like the industry secrets that a lot of publishers will say, like, "Oh, you can only get that with us." And it's like, actually, with a quick Google search, like, you can get all of their stuff.
Yeah,
So
you're
like
just
I learned,
packaging it this way.
right, exactly. So I learned all of that stuff, and I was able to apply it to my own books. I was able to I stepped back from writing for a while, went really deep into healing, figuring out who I was, what I wanted, and changing my trajectory a little bit. And using all of this knowledge, now I was able to eventually start Rose Avenue and couple all of that within my writing, within working with my authors, within the business. And so it was a bunch of different little things here and there put together to make this like beautiful puzzle piece of, Rose Avenue and what I'm doing now.
That's cool. I like that you went into the side of it to make like that's scary, right? Like marketing yourself is scary because for one, especially for authors, um, indie authors especially, we are marketing our personality, our brand,
Yeah.
like us, more than we are the books in the beginning. And so, with what you wrote being so personal to the situations that you went through, was there a was there any sort of balance that you felt like you needed to do between protecting, your vulnerable side of this is really raw and this is really deep into my personal life, because it sounds like your characters are a direct reflection of what you've gone through, to just sharing it with your readers.
Yeah, there at first in the beginning, there was more navigating of like what I wanted to be open about, what I wanted to be forthcoming with. And eventually I got to the point and realized there's a lot of other women who have gone through similar things and their voices aren't being heard yet. I'm out of it, so to speak, like still in therapy, still healing, all of those things. But I was to a point where I was like, you know what? Transparency is the best thing that I can be in my business and in writing. So that's like my number one thing that I always go back to is transparency. So if someone asks me about, "Oh, where'd you get the inspiration for your story?" I tell them, "Oh, I went through that." Like that, yes, there's fiction to it, but I went through those firsthand experiences, most of them. So I was able to bring a lot of, you know, that information into those stories, which I think bridges the gap between the reader reading a story and really connecting with the story. So all that to say, transparency has been something that over time I've decided I'm just going to be transparent. Like, you've got to be transparent if you want people to really, quote unquote, buy into your business or into your book. You have to be transparent with them because, as you had said, we are promoting our brand, our personal self before the book a long time in the very beginning. So yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's great because you are exactly right. Like there's people that need to hear that story and need to hear the hope, to be honest with you. I love that. And I can understand what you're saying about that it took you a while to get to that point. Because like I've never ever spoken about my relationship before because my kids were still young. And I've never ever gone online and bashed my ex-husband. Like I've never done that. I have no desire to do that. And that's not, I don't feel like what I'm doing now is just expressing my experience and how, like how did I get through it? How did I acknowledge where I was at? Have to forgive myself for making, because I make decisions, right, of staying or whatever. Um, and then moving forward and taking that big, huge, terrifying leap to leave, which it's a scary step. But I love that you see that as like a important part of it.
Right. Right. And I like what you said too about, you're not bashing your ex-husband. That's not at all my intention. I can't write their narrative, but I can share mine. I'm sharing my story, and everybody's going to have their own truth to something. They're going to have their own side. And if their side differs from mine, okay, but I still have my side. That doesn't negate what I say or what I experienced and
Yes.
went through just because there's, maybe has a different narrative.
Yeah.
That is such an important message.
Mm-hmm.
100%. Because I feel like oftentimes people want to pick his or her side or whatever, it's this constant battle of the sexes, if you will. And in reality, there were things that probably set him up for huge failure. And there are things that clearly set you up for huge failure. And in a lot of times, we are the product of our situation until we see and learn that we can take control. And so often in our lives, we think that we're just kind of living it, right? We don't really realize that my actions and what I'm doing actually is going to be the trajectory to where my life goes. So we have to make conscious choices and conscious decisions if we consciously want to get there. Otherwise, we're going to end up way off course.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I think um, there's such a reality that it can be correlated to, the old um, fable Bible story, the the sail the sailboat just out in the middle. Like if you don't have any sails, you're just being tossed to and fro. But if you
Mm-hmm.
have direction and you have like, and I feel like that's going with what you were saying, Randy, of making decisions. This is the direction I want to go. I'm putting my sails up to go that way instead of just
Yeah.
letting the waves toss me around and
Yeah. Yeah, and that's
suck me
true with
over every which
so many
way.
things.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's true with so many things because if you don't know where you're trying to go, you don't know how you're going to get there. And you're like, even with marketing, if you don't have an end goal in sight, you're just going to throw spaghetti at the wall and hope something works out in your favor. You can't just live your life aimlessly. You actually have to work toward specific things.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that.
That's it.
So
Oh, I love that. Go ahead, Kathy.
no, I was just gonna kind of dive a little bit deeper into the whole marketing thing and how do you Um, how do you get your authors, and is it just authors, or do you work with narrators? Um, how do you get them to, I don't want to say buy into, but it is kind of buy into this, right?
Right. Yeah, so that's a really good question. So TikTok, actually, I know we've been experiencing craziness with TikTok.
We've got some
TikTok,
ups and down feelings
we
right
have,
now
we
about
have.
this.
That has been wonderful for making connections. And that, at the end of the day, is what it comes down to. It's connections and educating people. Like if I didn't make another dollar on my services, but I was able to continue educating authors and build a community of, book readers and authors and narrators, editors, all of the people in this industry just supporting one another, I would be satisfied because that was the whole point starting out for Rose Avenue. Like, yes, I have a set of skills that I can pass on and we can dive really deep and create a marketing strategy for you and all of the things. But at the end of the day, if you're not walking away from having a conversation with me where you learn something or you feel empowered to take your next step, I'm not doing my job. So ultimately, it's the connection and the education. That's what I'm striving for. So working with authors, while they are my main focus, I do work with other small businesses. So I have a client who owns a daycare. I have a client who is a doctor and they have a couple different doctor's office things going on. I have a clothing designer that I work with. So it's not just niche down to authors, even though that is
Yeah,
my primary focus. I'm very selective with other small businesses that I do take on.
I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah. A business is a business, right?
Yeah.
Whether you're selling lemonade or you're running a corporate business, you have to have profit. There are just core fundamental things within a business that you have to have for it to be a business.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's transferable. Like a marketing class is transferable whether you decide to stay with authorship or you switch into whatever it is in your journey.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh
This is
man,
exciting
that's cool.
because I'm starting a new business soon. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I have the networking down. Like I can talk to anybody about anything. But it's exciting, because you can always learn stuff. So I'm enjoying this conversation very much, Danielle.
Well, good. So am
I'm
I.
like a little sponge over here, just quietly soaking it up.
Right. Yeah. Would you get into talking about, maybe even like the first step that you talk to people about? Would you give us some inside tips for the first thing you talk to your clients about?
Yeah, so like I said, the start of any relationship that I have with a person that becomes a client always starts with education and connection. Those are the two main foundations. Once they decide, hey, I think this is a good fit for me, then we start talking more about their specific goals and where they're at, because then it takes the focus off of like the general education, and now we're niching down and we're really focusing on their specific wants and needs and how we can help them achieve that. So we will have like a deep dive conversation into what they've tried, what's working, what's not working, what their hopes are, what their goals are. And then once they transfer over to being a client, there's a questionnaire that's about like 15, 20 questions that gives me even more information to see what research they've done and what their demographic is that they're trying to target, what genre they're writing in, if they want to stick with one genre or multiple genres, because I have some authors who write in multiple genres, and there's different marketing things that you got to do for each different genre. So we take a very high view kind of look at where they're at, and I'll start pinpointing things of that I think we can start working on. But then we have this main structure that we follow through in this 12-week program that I have. We'll focus on the the branding. There we go. We'll focus on the branding in the first couple weeks, where we will create logos for them. We will create the fonts and the visuals and the aesthetic. We'll really create the aesthetical feel that they're wanting readers to have once they start coming over to their platform and are looking at their books. Because as we had talked about before, we're marketing ourselves. We ourselves are the brand. The author is the brand. The books are the product. Products are ever changing. So if we focus solely on the book, then once they write their second book and say it's in a different genre, it's completely lost. Everything that we've done is completely lost and they have to start all over. So we focus on creating the author brand, and we do that through the branding, like I said. Then we'll look at the content creation and coming up with a strategy that works for them so that they're not overwhelmed and they can actually juggle writing and having a life and enjoying themselves, and they're not just glued to their phones every single day posting 3 times a day 5 days a week, because that's unmanageable. That's crazy. I don't recommend that at all. And we'll talk about figuring out who their ideal audience is. We'll look at their goals, like I said, and really come up with an actionable daily strategy that they can take to reach those goals and how they're going to reach those goals. We'll look at analytics. We'll look at all the checks and balances and all the data, and we'll make adjustments as need be. And this goes on for 3 months, and then some clients are like, I need additional help so they can stay on longer. But that's kind of like the scope of what it is, from meeting me to getting into being a client into this program and working through me, and what the 3 months looks like together.
I
That's
love
so
that. The
cool.
structure,
Yeah.
I know. The structure is just phenomenal.
Yeah, and I
Like,
wanted to set it up too, so when they, like I said, when they get to their second book, they don't have to start all over. They have this foundation, they can keep going. The knowledge they're getting that can be applied to really any endeavor that they take on, a small business, their author career, whatever, because it's the foundations. And I think that's the starting point that a lot of people struggle with, is like they don't know how to get started.
yeah,
Yeah.
dang. Knowledge
Great.
dropping in here.
Man, that's awesome. I love that. It's pretty cool. Do you have people that are like, this isn't for me, like that's too much? Like,
Oh yeah, all the time. But I don't look at it as a negative thing, because I look at it as, if you're willing to invest and you truly believe in this dream of your writing, you will see the value in it. If you want to DIY everything, that's fine. That's your prerogative, but if you recognize that your time is also an investment piece, then you will realize that investing money to have someone teach you all the strategies and all the things that I've learned over the last 10 years that's going to outweigh, DIYing and failing and, trying all these things. And like I said, throwing spaghetti at the
And
wall
your
and hoping
mental
something works
health.
out. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's a good way to look at it too, is like, do you want to see your business succeed now or in 10 years when
Right.
you have
Maybe
DIY'd
in
yourself?
10 years.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah, because the burnout, what's going to catch up to you first, the burnout or the success?
Right.
Or the finances, like, because you're
Yeah,
going to spend that money. Like, you're going to
Yeah.
spend that money no matter when or how. You're going to spend it. I think I think a really good indicator is what value do they put on themselves? Like, do
Yes.
they,
oh yeah.
like, what do you do to take care of you? To like, what do you see your value as? I mean, do you think you're worth it to go get your nails done, or do something else, something that enriches you? Go to a painting class, or like it's all investing in yourself.
Yeah. And that's very evident too. I mean, you can tell pretty quickly which authors are investing in themselves and which ones aren't. And ultimately, you had said this too, you're going to spend the money. One way or another, you're going to spend the money. So are you going to spend it DIYing and, hoping for the best? Or are you going to,
MacGyvering the shit out of it.
right, right. Or are you going to invest in like educating yourself so that you can hit the ground running? Because that's really what we're wanting. We want to hit the ground running. And especially as new authors, like coming on TikTok, coming on Instagram, having no following and like trying to stand out in front of people is so hard. Like the market is so saturated and it's changed so much just in the last couple of years, and it's going to keep changing. So maybe what they're learning now might not apply 10 years down the road if they're DIYing everything that they're trying to do.
Dang. Such a
So
kick in the teeth, man.
yeah, right.
It's a tough pill to swallow. Like, not a lot of people want to hear it, but it's like, I don't know. I'm going to be frank with you. Like, what you
We
put
love
in
it.
is what you get back. Like if you're investing nothing, you're getting nothing back. And I've had to have that conversation with a previous client before. And, like, I can't do everything for you. Are you going to take some action too? Like, this is a collaboration.
Yeah, 100%.
So I have a question for you, because this seems to be like kind of what we talked about so far has been geared more towards new authors. How do you have seasoned authors that like come to you for marketing help, or like what is your demographic
Yeah, like, I've
essentially?
been doing it for a minute and it's not working.
Yeah. Or maybe
Yeah.
it has
So
been a little bit, but they're like, I don't have time for this.
yeah. So I do have most of my clients are like newer authors. However, I do have a large pool of seasoned authors who will reach out to me and they be like, "Hey, I have a question about this. Can you help me on this?" And I'm fine giving some education, some free advice, whatever. Especially if it's not something that they're really ready.
Sparingly, listeners, sparingly.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
And don't get pissed when
So
she
like,
says that'll be $500. Because
but
literally
yeah,
we're
like.
ready to do that right now for all of the mental shit that we've been doing.
Yeah.
Well, I would take it. But yeah, like I work with all kinds of authors though, but a lot of the newer ones are the ones who will say, "Hey, I really need help." But then there are again some of them who are more seasoned who will have questions, who will reach out. I have one client who she's been doing this for a while, and she's like, "You know what? I'm tired of dragging my feet with stuff. Like I really am ready for this to take off. Let's work together." And I'm like, deal. Like, let's see what we can do. Because when you have some of the foundational stuff done, the rest of the stuff becomes kind of easy. So, but yeah, like my demographic is primarily newer authors, but I do take on the people who are, when it boils down to, is I take on the clients who are ready to take action. I take on the clients who are doers, not just, oh yeah, I'll get to that. because we've had that before. I've had people who will come in and be like, yeah, that sounds great. Maybe like in a couple months we can like touch base. And it's like, no, 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 no. In a couple months, the market can change. In a couple months, your demographic could change. In a couple months, there's all these variables that could change. So it's like, are we going to take action, or are we just going to keep sitting around and hoping for the best,
Yeah.
All right. I have to ask the question that everyone who now wants to hire you wants to know. What does that look like for a financial investment for someone to work with you?
The financial investment, if they want to pay in full, which I have now expanded where we have multiple payment options, and I will say it here, I'm not saying it anywhere else. If the payment options that I currently offer are not something that an author can afford or they need more flexibility, they are always more than welcome to reach out to me. That's not a public facing thing that I tell everywhere else, but that is something that, it doesn't hurt to ask. So just wanted to throw that out there. But the investment for working with me in this 12-week capacity, doing all of the things, getting their foundations started to really rock their writing career is $1,997. That can
That
be
is
broken up.
That's
nothing.
it?
That is
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah, and then there's the 3 month payment plan where they can pay me every month, and that's about $670 I think per month. And then if they want to do 6 months, then it's $337 per month.
Yeah. Okay, I say that's nothing, but like it
In
I
the
know it
whole, in
sounds
the
like a
scope
lot.
of things,
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
like, if you look at the return on, the ROI, like
Yeah.
what are you're gonna make that shit up like so fast if
Oh
you
yeah.
are, you know, marketing well, if your brand is solid, if you're actually marketing to your target market instead of just, like you said, spitballing it and throwing it up and see who gets it. Um, I mean, you'll make that back in no time, I would think.
And logos and branding, that's not cheap either.
That
So if
right
you
there,
guys are
I mean,
helping out with
I
that,
yes, you're
yeah.
helping with that.
Yeah. Yeah, and some of my clients, again, this is what I'm sharing now is exclusive to the clients that I have. When someone works with me, when they sign on to work with me and they're in the Visibility Advantage program, the 12-week program, I do then offer them, if they need it, social media management and website design and creation. So those are additional things that they can add on to what we're doing. So they literally are getting like the full package.
Nice. That is huge. And like you said, you're going to pay for it either through your time, or you're going to pay through it through working a full-time job and then paying for it out of pocket.
Mm-hmm.
So that time that you're spending, either you're going to be spending it on working and paying for that, and then now your time when you go home isn't spent on that too.
Right.
Because you're paying for
It's
it
all,
twice that way.
yeah, it's all about mindset.
Yeah, that's huge. Dang, I need to take a minute to wrap my head around this, because you're hitting to me in
I
the
mean,
gut a
I
little
think
bit
you've
too with this.
probably gotten two new clients right here for two
Yay.
completely different things because clearly I'm not an author, nor am I a narrator. But, I mean, I'm not even right there yet to be able to do that, but 100%, like I can 100% see the value of what you do. Like, fuck yeah.
Well, I
What
would
is
love working
something?
with both of you.
Oh, yeah, that would be fun. What is something that you see most often is like that? What is the thing that you're seeing most often is that being the mistake that people are making, like before they come to you, or like something that they have this idea of like how it works and it doesn't. Do you have anything that you see over and over again?
Yes. It's a couple different things, and it really comes down to not understanding the market. They will hop on trends thinking that they're going to go viral. They'll use all of the hashtags that have a massive amount of uses. They will, do follow for follow. They do all of this stuff. They take messy action, which I'm not saying don't
I
take
feel
messy
like you just
action.
went to my Facebook and my platforms and just pulled everything I'm doing, and you're like,
I'm so sorry.
dang, she's directed this directly
Like,
towards me. Okay.
calling me out.
Do
Doing
it, Danielle. You do it. Just hit it harder. Just go for
okay.
it.
All right. Doing all of the stuff, but not having a strategy. That's the big thing is they will do all of the things, with no strategy. They're just like, let's get to 100 followers. Let's get to 1,000 followers. And it's like, okay, but what about money? Where are you selling your book? Because just because you have 100 followers or 1,000 followers doesn't mean you're making any money. So bottom line, if you're wanting to sell your book, you need to have a strategy to sell your book. And so when they're doing all of the random things and it's just a catastrophe. They're not working toward any specific goal, and they're just confused and they're overwhelmed and they're frustrated because they think that they're doing, things that are going to help, but when in reality, they're just doing all of these random things, but they're not tied together in a way that makes sense to help them grow, to help them monetize. And that's what we want, that we want them to grow and monetize. We want them to have sold out book signings. We want them to be on bestseller lists, but you can't get there with no strategy.
Do you help them too with like that whole book signing and like what to do there and branding and all the shit to take and all that stuff? Like, do you help with
Yeah.
that as well? That's part of
Yeah,
it.
yeah. I mean, that's part of the conversations that we have. Like, ultimately, once we get to the point of like, let's talk about strategy, then it's if you're wanting to do book signings, because a lot of people are like, oh, don't waste your time. You're not going to sell anything, blah, 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 blah. And some people, have negative experiences with that. I get that. I've seen it firsthand. But some people do really, really well. And the difference is they plan it. They have a strategy to help it be a sold out event. And, we can go deep into talking about how are we setting up your table? How are we setting up the environment that you're in? Because if you've got stacks of books on both sides of you, like it's overwhelming and you don't want them feeling overwhelmed. You want them to be like, oh, I'm going to go talk to this author. This looks
Because
inviting. This
it's
looks
still the
fun.
brand. You are still the
Exactly.
brand, not the
Yes.
book. Because you might have
Right.
15 different books from different genres, like you said, but you are still the brand. And if you, as the author, are not approachable, for one, and like someone who'd want, they'd want to talk to, for two,
Right.
they're, and unless you open your mouth, nobody's going to know that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's good. Dang, I had a question, but I'm trying to also very much soak in what you're saying personally. So it's like
I've
I'm
already
shifting
determined
from
that I'm going to go back, and this is definitely one. I mean, I re-listened to almost all of them, but I'm like, okay, I'll just talk and listen and ask questions, but on my re-listen, then I'll be taking notes.
That's fair. That's fair. You got me beat there because that is not how my brain is working right now.
Because I think that there's a lot that we could do with the podcast too.
Yeah, no, I agree. Oh, my question was, you keep saying we. Do you have a partner, or are you just like we as in me and everything I do?
No, it's just me. I mean we as in me and the author. When
Oh,
me and the
gotcha.
client, when we're working together, I always use like we. I guess it's because I look at us as like a team. It's a
Yeah.
collaboration. It's not just me doing all of the work and like they reaping the benefits. It's a collaboration. We do it together.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, cool. Yeah, that was a question I have. I was like, oh, there's someone else in there, but no, that makes sense because it's a partnership in building up what you want to build and what you want to see.
Right.
So, all right. So you are not just this amazing marketing person. You are also an author.
Yes.
And you've written your poetry stuff, you've written your contemporary stuff. Um wow. Yeah, my brain is just braining out right now. You have how many books do you have published right now?
So I have two books published. I've actually taken them off the market because I had said that I wrote them with a pen name, and now I've kind of like done a personal rebrand of everything. So those will be coming out this year with my name on them, new covers, new titles, all of the things. But I do have two published books, and then I have my third book that I never finished writing because I was in that relationship, didn't know who I was. That's in the works. I'm almost done with that, and then I have two other works in progresses that I'm working on right now. So I got a lot going on.
Yeah, you do. Dang.
Amazing.
How do you manage all of that? How do you manage being a writer? So you're writing on something that's fixing to come out, you're writing on things that are coming down the pipe, you're also helping all these other people with their marketing things. How do you not get burnt out?
I prioritize taking time for myself. I prioritize taking time specifically for my business. My schedule is 9 to 4, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. I'm working deep dive stuff in my business with my writing, whatever it may be. So that could be content creation, that could be planning out launches, that could be creating new resources, refining my signature program, all of the things. And then from 11 to 4, those are my like open office hours. So that's when I'm meeting with clients. That's when we're building out their structure, where I'm looking at things that they're sending me, and we're adjusting as we get through the process. I'm doing branding, whatever it may be. And then in the evening, me and my husband, my now husband, have a rule that no work after a certain time. Like, we don't talk about it. We literally watch The Office reruns every single night, and we'll eat food and hang out with our dogs. Like, that's what our evening looks like. So it's a lot of enforcing boundaries and like making sure I have structure in my day.
I like that. I like that your structure goes like, you're like, I don't just sell you this, I also am a product of this and live this
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah.
That's important. Now, you shared with us a funny story about publishing your first book without editing it.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, I
Listen, you're
did.
making me forget how to speak here. I gotta give some payback.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So my first book, I was so excited to say I was an author, right? And I think we all jump the gun with certain things starting out. I'm guilty of this. I know tons of other authors who are guilty of this as well. I did not hire an editor. I did not have any developmental editing done. So when I published my book, I was like, oh yeah, this is great. Like, this is wonderful. Da 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 da. And because I had a lot of supportive friends and family members, it sold out very quickly in some of the local stores that we had it in. And then come to find out, I start reading through it months later because I'm like, I'm just, like, this is awesome. Like, I'm doing great. I'm killing it. Like, look at me. I start reading through it and like, so, okay, spoiler, a little bit of a spoiler. One of the characters' moms gets breast cancer. Okay. And what I realized that I did was I announced that she had been diagnosed earlier on in the book and then forgot about it. And then for like 5 chapters was like leading up to, oh, what are the test results going to say? What are the test results going to say? And then it's like this big like re-announcement. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, I felt so bad because so many people were like, this book is so great. And I'm like, is it?
Okay,
So,
so that is
Don't
the
lie to me.
importance
yeah,
of making sure you get people to read your book that are not
yes,
friends and family members
yeah.
and you have no attachment to hurting your feelings.
Yeah, it was so bad. I felt so awful for all the people who had like bought the book and was like raving about it, and the new ones who had bought it, and I knew what they were getting into. I was like, oh man. So, anyways, that that's being made. So when they're re-released, that won't be in there.
Oh my gosh.
That's hilarious.
Whoa. But I mean, it's so writing, like the creative process of getting your thoughts into your book, you often know in-game stuff in the beginning. So it's like, how do you lead it up to not revealing everything right away? And then sometimes, like, if you don't have a process, and I mean like a process, it's so easy to put information in that's not ready for it, or
Hmm.
in some cases, think that you've said everything you need to say, but then people are just like, I don't get it.
Yeah,
Because you know what the characters are going through and their backstory and everything, but you might not lay everything out the way that it comes across that way to the readers.
right, right. And that was my discovery from going from a pantser to a planner. So now I have extensive outlines for all of my stories.
Same. I was the same. I was such a pantser, and I was like, let's just ride this train. And now I'm like, I know almost every chapter of this story, and I just go back in and fill in the details of
Yep.
like what they say and whatnot.
Yeah, that's what I was doing with my current work in progress last night. Actually, I have like 6 pages of outlines that I went back through, and I was like, no, it needs to be better. And so I went through and redid the outline, and I was filling in different scenes here and there last night. So I just surpassed 50,000 words for that. So that's really exciting.
Nice. That
That
is so.
is.
And do you feel like doing it that way helps your word count when you do sit down and you're like actually working on it? You're like, me personally, I can do 2,000 words in about 2 hours worth, 2 or 3 hours worth of just sitting down and writing because I know exactly where it's going.
Yeah, absolutely. I always will start with, and a lot of people they don't do this or they'll disagree with it, but I will start with a general word count and goal in mind. So for this
Yep.
book, I'm looking at about 100,000 words, right? And so I know that with my outline, how do I break up each act into a chunk of words and then break it down even further into like chapter by chapter, so that really helps me because then I have a specific goal, an actionable goal that I can easily obtain. I can work toward that, and I know it's hitting the end goal together.
Yeah, I like that. I love how everyone has their different processes too. It's like you take what works for you and you leave what doesn't.
Right. Right.
So when is that book going to be re-released?
So I had released that book on my mom's birthday back in 2016, I think. So I'm hoping to be able to re-release it again this year on her birthday, June 6th, 2025, kind of in honor of her again, because she did really influence my love for reading and writing when I was very, very young. So this is kind of like me giving back to her a little bit.
That's so
Mm,
sweet. I love that.
yeah, that's awesome. And so you'll just have the first one released then, right?
I think I might end up, or what I could do, I've been debating on this, is release all three of them. So the third book in the series, I might get that done in time where I can just release all three of them and be like, surprise! So
Package
I don't
deal.
know. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean that's strategy, right? Marketing, all of that jazz. There's different ways you can package it. That's really cool. An idea for like, a release day means you can also have a reduced price to buy all three for
Yeah.
one.
Yep. Absolutely.
And you
See,
can
I
be
know
thinking
some stuff.
about putting it in audiobook.
Yeah, that is something I'm definitely going to do actually because my uncle is blind and he was actually the one that introduced me to audiobooks because he couldn't enjoy books except through listening to them. And so that is something I'm trying to make all of my books accessible to all kinds of people. So I am looking into doing audiobooks as well.
Yeah, I love that. I love audiobooks so much. Dyslexia kicks the crap out of me for reading normally, and yeah, I love audiobooks. All right. I think we need to end this so that way we can hurry up and call you and talk to you about situations we've got going on because you are very valuable and what you're doing is huge in this community. Like seriously.
Yeah, well, it's really rewarding, not just for, clients. It starts with me. I feel very proud of the work that I'm doing. I'm happy being able to help others. So I really love
You
what I'm
should.
doing.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
One more micro question. Do you do informational? I know you do informational stuff, but where do you do informational videos? Where do you give stuff that's kind of like just content that people can go and consume, to get an idea of like the strategies you use?
Yeah. So people can find me on Instagram or TikTok at Rose Avenue Literary. That's my handle on any platform that I'm on. I'm not on Facebook. I am on Pinterest. But I don't post there very often. Very rarely I do. I also have a newsletter called the Inkwell Influencer that people can join, and I will send semi-regular newsletters. We'll take a deep dive into exploring different marketing strategies to help them and that they can implement starting,
And that's all stuff that just is out there for
yeah,
the world to consume. Yeah,
yeah.
I love that.
What is the thing on Instagram? Is it Rose, Rose, like the flower?
Yes. Yeah. At Rose Avenue Literary.
Write
And
that
then you've
down,
got a
people.
website. Yeah, right. And then your website is RoseAvenueliteRary.com.
Yes. RoseAvenueLiterary.com. Anywhere that I'm at, it's Rose Avenue Literary.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I was about to call you Rose.
You're not the first one. It's okay. It happens all the time.
what what made you, is that a middle name? Is that
No,
what made that?
I know it sounds so silly. A lot of people will be like, "Oh, your business has to have like a meaning behind the name." I just like roses.
Yeah, no.
I like roses.
Yeah.
So I was like, let's come up with a creative way, and like, because I'm in marketing, I wanted something to have a little bit of a modern edge to it. And I had seen another business before that was something with a street or an avenue or whatever. And I was like, I really like that. That's kind of like, corporate almost, and so I wanted to tie that in. And so it became Rose Avenue Literary.
Yeah, I like it. All right, I'm
Very
done with
cool.
my questions now. For now, I think we need to have you back on so we can focus more on like questions.
Absolutely.
Yeah, dig deep. Alrighty, Danielle, thank you so much for joining us. This was an epic conversation,
Really
and just
good.
how many times you made my brain stop working was fantastic.
Well, thank you guys so much for having me.
Thank you so much.
All right, everybody, thank you so much for listening to this episode of L3. We'll see you on the next one.
Bye, y'all.
Hey guys, thanks for joining us on this episode of Lemon's Listening Library. Remember, every story has a journey, and every journey deserves to be heard. Keep reading, keep writing, and keep listening.